What's the matter?
Look! Nobody seems to want to listen to me, and everyone is jumping to the wrong conclusions. Oh, there they are, at last. 10, yes.
Will it ever be recovered?
They're not moving.
They can't have seen us, Doctor.
Go quickly.
Oh, well, them little spheres causing mayhem. So, between 30th of September 67 and the 4th of November 67, we were treated to one of the most atmospheric and suspense-filled stories in classic Who. With howling winds, intimidating Yeti, mystical monastic chants and voices. So, as part of our mini-series on the missing episodes, our forensic spotlight turns to this Himalayan jaunt in Doctor Who history, the Abominable Snowman. I mean, good to see you again, Stefan. You've done the research. There's only episode 2. It's a bit of a heavy load to actually get your clips off it, but yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a massive shame, this one. It's it's an iconic story, isn't it? It's I mean, it's one of those where it was an attempt at the time to find other alternatives to the Daleks. It was, it was a really good, sort of placeholder for what then came. It had a follow up. It's iconic. It's one of them stories, isn't it?
And I don't know whether you ever got into the Targets, but I read this Target book. There was the Moonbase and a fair few that I read a lot. I loved this one, The Abominable Snowman. It just grabbed my imagination. And it carries well on the page, the monastery in Tibet. You can imagine these mountains and everything. And of course, so you were just going on imagination. And of course, there was something about it, Stefan, because obviously they booked the Yeti again to be written for a sequel while they were still making this, weren't they? Or while they were broadcasting it.
Yeah, they sort of anticipated the success straight away. Like I said, I think that it was obvious when they were filming it that even the cast and crew said the Yeti themselves were actually quite easy to work with, unlike some other monsters where they feel like they're sort of penned in or they're restricted. I know they were obviously quite cumbersome in the size, but they were workable. I think that's what was important with it. So I think they did cast ahead. They've sort of set a stone in Doctor Who folklore, really. How well they became.
I was always amazed because I remember seeing some survey once when I was a fan as a kid, and it said the big five monsters in Doctor Who, and it listed the Yeti as one of them, and I thought they're the ones I've never seen. We saw them. Well, we saw a claw in the Five Doctors, but that was about it. And I was so disappointed. I thought, I'm going to see a Yeti at last, and it wasn't really. Not really, anyway. So here we go. Radio Times. I normally kind of reliably look at what Mark Braxton says. So he says, if the Abominable Snowman was a stick of rock, it would have Doctor Who running through it. Few stories scream out the show's name and capture its appeal quite so precisely. Unusual setting. Huge and threatening monster, creepy malefactor, clear storytelling, killer concurrence of personal peril and he goes on. He obviously does think this is one of those that actually just has all the ingredients of a good Doctor Who. But just before you come in, he also says the tragedy is, here we are, deep into one of the most sustained runs of quality series in the show's history, and yet only a paltry number of episodes prevail. From the Moonbase up to and including this one, only 10 of a possible 31 installments exist. And you keep an eye on Film is Fabulous. I keep an eye on Film is Fabulous. I think the latest notice you showed me was about maybe an announcement after in the new year. They said, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that's what we expected, wasn't it? We knew it wasn't going to be this side of Christmas. We knew. I know you've spoken to John Franklin himself and whatever else, but they were getting the tax affairs sorted out. They've only just become a registered charity, But we have noticed that there's been a hive of activity. They've obviously got a backlog of work that they need to get through. They're also hiring additional members of staff. All the donations we're making is being put to good use. I think that you can't really, whatever money or anybody is donating is into a good cause with this one. Whether you're a Doctor Who fan or not, it's a case of, that's the end goal for a lot of us Whovians, but at the end of the day, they're doing so much work themselves. But just going back to what Mr. Braxton said here on this one, I mean, the figures themselves, it's so poor when you look at this stretch of the original series. It's a poor figure. It's a poor turnout. It's almost like going to a football game and they're only being, only being like 10% of the crowd.
Yeah. It's that awful bad luck in a way that you almost think the way they must have been stored. Maybe they were stored in a kind of almost broadcasting order, possibly. Yeah. And when somebody's gone to grab, to burn and get rid of, that the bad luck is they've almost started in a place where we all think it's one of the best periods of Doctor Who history.
Yeah, it's one of them things again, isn't it? Because it's a story where we know with how the junk stuff and whatever else, they all had sort of viewing rights across the world and whatever else, and they all had license expiry and whatever else. But, this story in particular, when you look at the group it was batched with, so your Enemy of the World, Web of Fear, and whatever else goes along with this, it's kind of no surprise it was junked at the same time as others, but it was in quite a big block, of episodes. It's not like other stories where I've seen it where, I don't know, with the rights that were broadcast, you see Tomb of the Cybermen, Evil of the Daleks were together. It was only those two stories, but I think in this block, I think there's about 4 or 5 different stories that are batched in, so it would make sense that if the license is expired and the policy was to junk, that all that big stretch is gone.
Isn't that interesting? Very interesting.
It's one of those things I still can't get my head around why stuff wasn't retained for reference points in terms of even just an open episode or just key moments, that sort of thing. It still really sort of concerns me how the BBC sort of treat their work. It's not like you go to school, kids go to school and they make artwork every year and it all gets binned at the end of the year.
Although I must admit, they didn't know that this TV kind of project was going to take off as it is, and that VHS everybody would own. I suppose they didn't know that, but it's their property, their prize, their property, copyright and all that, but they didn't look after their brand very well. Just for those people who are my age and higher, those books, we know them well. I've got them both, actually. I mean, look at this. I mean, obviously, I've got my AI that did a version of... You see, the thing is, Stefan, this story taps into something deeper, which is... I used to love the Arthur C. Clarke Tales of the Unexplained and the Sasquatch. The Canadians have the Sasquatch. We've got the Yeti. It's the same myth around the world of this Bigfoot. And of course, Doctor Who just tapped into it. Before Philip Hinchcliffe, we were tapping into kids kind of... the classic exploration going, is there a monster out there? Is there something out there? And then your good old doctor lands and bumps into him. Because, of course, the joke is right at the end. They do see one.
See one, yeah.
Oh, no! It can't be.
It goes back to the origins of this story as such. I mean, when Henry Lincoln and Mervyn Heisman were kind of coming up with the idea, they wanted to involve a mythical creature. They wanted something that was set on Earth again, because from what we know, Patrick Troughton himself actually was friends with Henry Lincoln, and he pretty much bumped into him or met up with him and said that he was, very kind of getting frustrated with the, traveling through space and not kind of covering anything else. But I think this story, like you said, that just popped up on the screen here, they had various ideas in mind. They had Loch Ness Monster, and Himalayan Yeti was brought up a couple of times, and they settled on that one. So it sort of boded very well, because it's something that even those who probably weren't fans of Doctor Who at the time would have known about the Himalayan Yeti, the myth. So it'd have probably been interesting to those people watching at home that weren't necessarily into the show, but could still relate to, it's Himalayan Yeti, that sort of thing, and building a story around it.
Well, there's even that little thing that you do as a Doctor Who fan sometimes. It's like, the Visitation, when,
Yes.
they tell you you're in Pudding Lane. I always like that little nod to the history. Yeah. They don't touch history. Well, they did actually. But that you don't normally, in the classic Who, you didn't normally meet the actual famous person. You were in the background. And so you've got this idea that, there's this myth about, and the Doctor will basically come across whether it exists or not.
Yeah. No, it's completely true, isn't it? It's like I said, it's almost like he's there in the background, but something does happen in time. But I suppose they don't get too involved. So then in folklore, that nothing gets mentioned, I suppose, is probably the best way to describe it. Not like nowadays, where it seems like the Doctor's this figure that everyone has bumped into at some point, and he's changed their lives and whatever else. And yeah, it's just very different.
And I have to say, you see photographs of this and you think, God, the location was so well chosen. It really, I mean, I know from Carry On Up the Khyber used Wales, and they did pretty well. But here, you've got it again, and it's a hell of a great shot. I mean, it really does look atmospheric. It looks like it's a great day to do it, and all the rest of it. So here we go. This is the first transmission. Some of you may have been there. You may have remembered this Saturday nights in 1967. Gosh, it's way before my time, but yes, it's there. So there you go. These are some of the listings, just to give you a kind of taste of the time. Obviously, Victoria was very popular. It's funny, she's not popular with my ears, but she really does scream. I mean, here's an example. Let's have a look. This will remind you. Me and Garbage were discussing this, and so we came up with this one.
Oh, let's get away from here, Jamie.
Oh, if we can. What's the matter?
Look!
Come on!
Doctor!
Oh, Cameron, we don't know where he is!
Jamie!
Run! I think we've shaken it off. Listen.
What is it? Doctor! A horrible thing. What was it?
Don't know. I don't know where he is! Run!
Will you shut up? Will you shut up? We just wanted to have Fraser Hines strangling her, but the AI couldn't cope with that. So basically, he gently covers her in a woolly jumper. But will you shut up?
Well, I suppose it's almost like they're making love on it, because they always had a bit of a romance, didn't they, on screen? So it's only kind of putting everyone's suspicions at rest on that one.
It's amazing, isn't it? So yes, I mean, we're all aware she was a good screamer, so to speak. Maybe. I mean, look how popular these Yeti were, just even on filming. The kids aren't running away.
Well, this is it. I mean, I know we'll talk about it in a bit more depth, but we're so fortunate. I mean, I've not seen many other serials of this era where there's so much behind the scenes photographs that exist still. It seems so well publicized, and at the time, I think, like I mentioned earlier on, how they anticipated this to be a success. And I think it's obviously by the bystanders just looking, I think they were loving it. And I think that's when they probably were like, oh, blimey, these seem to be a bit of a hit with the bystanders. We've not even put the first episode out yet. We might need to look at, might be onto something here, like they were with the Daleks originally. It's it's
honest,
quite unique.
And when you see it in color, I have to say, you see that Yeti in color
Mm,
with the outside broadcast location, and actually it looks pretty authentic. It looks fine to me. It looks grounded in the location. It looks good. It's
yeah,
not like sometimes, you see, somebody in a Vord costume or something. No, this
mm.
this looks as though it's in the right place.
Well, I think that's probably what connected with the audience. Is it was relatable and it was believable and it was realistic as well. It wasn't. There was no CGI, obviously. Secondly, like I said, it's something of this earth. Let's just say. It's not like an ice warrior where that's been costumed and made up and whatever else. When you think this is a big bear at the end of the day, that's the best way to describe it. So yeah, and like I said, it's probably. I think they missed a trick because I think they could have done so much more with the Yeti in this era. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose the limit was they hadn't given them their own kind of autonomy because obviously they were
Yes.
always being used. That's always the killer. Once we invented Davros, the same happened to the Daleks,
Yeah.
and I think we need, the Yeti need to become their own being. So we need to free them. Now, of course, we're doing the missing episodes mini series, and of course, as we know with this one, only one episode exists, episode 2. And it has been animated, so we will actually just talk about the elephant in the room for a second.
Mm.
This wasn't the best. I mean, I was only just talking about this the other day regarding the CBeebies, but basically, this isn't this isn't a promising look. When the budget is limited, granted, this is not the way to sell Doctor Who to the youngsters or anybody else for that matter. It's a damn shame, isn't it? I mean, when you think of we've come to this missing episodes done with it's not even cat and pugwash animation, and you think it's just a please. Um, I don't know. It's just it leaves
It's,
it very unsatisfying.
um, yeah, I rewatched it a couple of weeks ago. I thought, you know what, I'll give it another go because everything gets another go. I mean, I know with the Dr. Jamie Victoria, the template's already there for this animation, so it's just obviously adapting the new costumes and the body movement. So it's not don't really have any queries of how the humans are. It's purely how the Yeti have been done. And what really surprised me with it, and I didn't really know this, but I know Rob Ritchie's done a lot of the animations, and some of the more credible ones did involve him. And I was just very surprised with the Yeti in this one because it does seem, like you said, a bit Captain Pugwashy in terms
Yeah,
of how the animation was done for the Yeti, the lack of texturing that's gone on there. It
yeah,
looks like something I could have drawn on a bit of paper. I wanted something with a bit more. I mean, I think they might have had certain challenges with it because I know when the animated Web of Faith, I know it's a different mark of the Yeti, but I know they did this different animation, but even in that, the Yeti was still they weren't fluffy. They weren't what
yeah,
you expected on screen. I think what makes it even worse for this story in particular is the fact that we do have a fair amount of content of them in live action with the surviving episode 2 as well. So it just makes it feel worse in that respect. I suppose it's unlike if we had an episode of the Macra Terror left
yeah,
and we saw
yeah.
how Macra were, and then we saw how the animation did it, you'd feel a bit let down in some respects. But everyone regards the Macra Terror animation as a really good one. So yeah, it's questionable, let's just say.
So we've got an interesting cast and crew. We've mentioned the writers. You've got. I mean, it's interesting. There's no incidental music, and all you hear is the howling all the time, the howling or the monastic voices. And I suppose that adds to and that amazing voice. Innes Lloyd, having his stint. I know over Christmas the BBC are going to show an episode of the Ice Warriors as a kind of tribute to him.
Mm.
Um, but yes, this is you've mentioned that when you've seen them on screen, and that clip from Web of Fear Part One when it seems to be in a collection, and
Yes.
you get that really sinister music. just on that clip, I'm thinking, oh my God, these would want to be one of the most horrific monsters in Doctor Who. But when you just have them clunking around now and again with a beep sound, that's okay for a while. But I think that's the lack of development. They need some development, don't they?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I think as well, just going back to it, there's a point that I sort of picked up on in Web of Fear where the Doctor mentions, like I said, oh, it's almost like a Mark II version. But what I don't understand is apparently Professor Travers bought that back from Tibet,
Yeah.
which is obviously from this story, and then it's obviously in Julius Silverstein's museum. But how did the Mark One become the Mark II? That they never really explain. But at the same time, like I said, if you look at the costumes here in these pictures, obviously you can see there's an obvious difference. The fact that you've got eyes on the Mark II and you don't have eyes on the Mark One, it's a bit funny how they do it. But you could sort of see that they were a little bit sort of bottom heavy originally. They sort of then bulked them out a bit evenly. It's almost like they're riding around with space hoppers in the trousers. Do you know what I mean? Or clown pants on or something.
Or the Tinky Winky or Teletubby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of that feeling, isn't it? That's
yeah.
But I suppose if they'd have done Web of Fear with these Mark Ones, let's just say, it probably wouldn't have felt as menacing. Because the Mark II were a bit more sort of rough around the edges, a bit more sort of, ooh, we've got some muscle in here and whatever else. And they obviously gave them guns and whatever else. But in part one, obviously the Mark Ones, they're a bit more cuddly and friendly.
Victoria, the TARDIS is that way. We don't know where he is. Run!
Good old toilet humor, eh?
Well, you've got to get there. But do you know what? We were inspired by John Pertwee because John Pertwee said there's nothing more scary than be seen an Yeti on your loo and tooting Beck. That was his famous quote. So that I'm inspired by the Third Doctor. So yes, so here we go. We're off and running on the plot. Of course, you always remind me, Brendan. They may not have read this. They may not have watched this. Does the plot grab you? You've said you've watched it again a few weeks ago. Because I'm going to show you positives and negatives in a moment from different famous fans of Doctor Who, and of course, some argue it's got lots of padding. Some say it's very, very, very atmospheric. So where do you stand on the plot? Does it hold?
Yeah, I suppose the plot holds well. It's hard because obviously we haven't got the original to view. I think, like I said, there's characters like the Great Intelligence, which I imagine would have been a bit more scary than what we've seen in the animation. And they tried to amend it. And all I can really go off is the audio and the animation and that episode 2. But I would say the plot probably does hold quite well on it. I know at the time it wasn't built up as like a start of what was to come with the Web of Fear that followed, but it does very much feel like a prequel to it.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if this was a standalone, was on its own, I do feel like it may have been one that was forgotten about very quickly.
The Abominable Snowmen is one of the finest examples of pure gothic horror the series ever produced. The atmosphere is suffocatingly good. If you read Frankenstein or watch a good version of Frankenstein, you will get that vibe where, the monster's out there somewhere and you get the howling wind and it's always very wintry. There is an element where you are touching classic gothic horror tropes. So I can see what they're saying there. I just wonder...
But don't forget, it opens up with quite a shocking sort of scene. Professor Travers is on the mountain with someone and they get killed, from the off, and it's like, is it at night as well? the camping. It's that sort of, oh, blimey, that's that what's gone on here sort of feeling, you know. So it does give you a bit of a woof from the start.
I know what you mean. I'm just thinking, as being a kid, you remember very strange things. Some people are auditory learners, some are visual. So basically, there could be an element where the howling wind, a lot of people reference this wind, it just keeps going. And I just wonder whether that just kind of taps into some people's psyche that, well, I remember that one because of that sound. I remember that one because of the eyes. I remember that one because of various things. So here, David Howe and Stephen James Walker, a masterpiece of atmosphere and suspense. Location footage in Wales perfectly sells the setting, and the Yeti are terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's sort of hit the nail on the head. I think mentioned obviously about the location. You know, they couldn't go to the Himalayas to film this, you know, or they couldn't really go to some snowy mountain somewhere. They had to keep it within the UK. But I think choosing sort of that region of Wales is probably a very popular place to do this. Yeah, they probably had some continuity issues at some stages where there might have been downpours of snow and whatever else. But I think the setting they probably executed as well as they could do with filming in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, we are, you know, go and look them up on Facebook, everybody. There's some amazing photographs, some great, and they're very sharp. Alan Barnes, Doctor Who magazine, The Abominable Snowmen remains one of the most chilling and effective stories of the Troughton era. I can never say his blooming name, but you know who.
Mr. P.
Yeah, Mr. P. His possession scene is still unnerving 50 years later. I'll have to take your word for that. I've heard the sound. I've read the book. The book to me grabbed me. So I take what he's saying there. Great voice, fantastic voice.
Were better that you were not found in here. Go quickly.
We had a good excuse to see Troughton in that court, didn't we? This is kind of, he's like a mini Yeti himself.
Yeah, well, I think again, just going back to, I think because it was filmed on location, you know, it's still something that Doctor Who had still not really been able to do, because obviously previous years you had William Hartnell who was restricted to what he could do and whatever else. I think they were still finding stories that they could go, let's go on location for this, you know, and we'd have to then book a studio and whatever else. But I think it's been described by people like Fraser Hines and whatever else that they almost treated it a bit like a school trip, as in they'd been let out for the day. And I think that sort of probably shows in the acting that they did, was they were genuinely very excited to be doing this one, even though it was absolutely awful weather in some occasions. You know, it looks like it was hurling it down there, and it was obviously very cold as well. So you probably were out wanting to be one of the Yetis in that costume there.
Yeah, you probably don't need any acting skills, actually, because you've got everything there. Now, Paul Cornell, Martin Day, Keith Toppin say episode 1 is, and sadly to say, it doesn't exist Episode 1 is one of the strongest opening episodes of any 1960s story. The mist, the howling, the discovery of the dead Yeti, chills every time. Now, you referenced a bit of the start.
Yeah.
It is a strong episode 1, I must admit.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously it's such a shame we don't have it. But obviously episode 2 is not too bad, you know, in terms of how it sets off. But obviously the opening of the story it does set the scene very well. I think you can't really argue with that one in terms of whether you like the story or you don't. It does set the scene very well. And for those that are fans of the show, I don't think we were, say if this was broadcast now, I don't think we'd be having any rants about it, you know. We might be a little bit picky on it. I don't think we'd be critical of it.
Well, you can see here an example that proves you're so wrong that, you know, they look as though they're having a really grim time and they're very unhappy people. Look at that. They're having fun, aren't they? Look at this.
Yeah.
Of course, Jamie, his mum worked a bit with Deborah Watling, and she just always talked about, every time she was at ATV, she'd see Deborah Watling with Jack Watling. And of course, you know, this is the first of two occasions when she's working with her dad. It's just when I've heard from Jamie's mum that she says that Deborah Watling then would just take herself away from the cast. She was always sat with her dad. It was always it's interesting, isn't it, to get into a different insight? Because as a Doctor Who fan, I'm thinking, oh, it's Victoria, and then I hear from somebody else going, oh, she always stuck with her dad. Her dad kind of maybe got her work. I don't know.
I think it was probably a thing of looking after her old man in some respects. I mean, not like he needed looking after as such, but I think she was very much a daddy's girl.
I think so.
She's very much a daddy's girl. But the thing is, you know, if I'd have produced a daughter like that, I'd be very protective of her as well. So, you know, I think that just says it all.
And it does happen. People get the nod for that. You know, I mean, our mum got me my first job at Step on the, you know, just get you some work, you know.
Yeah.
So, Toby, we all know Toby. This is a story that made the Yeti genuinely terrifying. Snow, mist, howling, and those glowing eyes in the darkness. It's the closest 1960s Who ever got to a full-blown horror movie. Horror seems to be getting mentioned an awful lot, I have to say. And it's horrific.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I mean, it's not exactly like it's a gory story in terms of there's blood and whatever else all over it. It's there's scenes where the Yeti obviously are attacking, and the great intelligence becomes, you know, something that you don't expect. There's the final showdown and whatever else that goes along with it. But I know Toby himself is quite a big fan of the Yeti. I know when they found Web of Fear, he was genuinely so happy because it was the one he really wanted to see again. But I know he's very fond of the Yeti, and to be honest, I think like you said, they're sort of within that top 5 Doctor Who monsters, you know, that we all recall. They probably wouldn't have done if they hadn't have had a sequel. Or they didn't appear again in the 5 Doctors for that claw. But they must have made a mark.
Well, yeah, and they're the least used. We sometimes talk about Daleks are overused, or even Cybermen are overused. Ice Warriors have started to be tapped into a bit more with New Who, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Sontarans have been overused, actually changed.
Yeah, I mean, well, Sontarans went for a bit of a funny period where I suppose, you know, you look at something like the Invasion of Time, it's not the best story, is it, in my opinion? But obviously then they came back in the new series with Tennant. We didn't see him for a while. Then we saw him with, we saw him for a little bit of Matt Smith in the Pandorica Open. And then we saw them, obviously, with the Flux Saga. But, you know, with the Yeti, I mean, I think it's one that they've always looked back on and gone, ooh, could we have brought that? When they've gone, which classic can we bring back? I do think they probably have considered it. But whether there's some rights issues or something to do with it or what have you, I don't know. Is it one of those things where we think, yeah, if they'd have brought them back, it's how brought them back. We know the Great Intelligence returned, but he had snowmen instead this time. But, you know, if he had Yeti again, it'd be a bit like, oh, it's predictable, that one.
Just to be fair, I'll spend a minute or two showing you some of the negatives. Pacing drags in the middle episodes with too much monastery chit-chat and repetitive Yeti lumbering. It's base under siege done by numbers without the tension of better examples like the Ice Warriors, which I find interesting because the Ice Warriors, I sometimes think I'm in the same room all the time. Like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're not to be binge watched. It's 25 minutes a week. I can imagine a bit of howling, a bit of Yeti lumbering, and then I go to school for 5 days, and then I'm back to watch part 2 and part 3. I don't know. This is when I think, are we judging it differently? I don't know, because this is a 1.5 month story to a kid in the 60s. And I think sometimes this is why they become classic and vivid in the memory, because they've sat in your head for a month or 2. You know, Dalek's master plan 3 months.
Yeah.
That's all you're thinking about. And I think that helps. You have time to kind of imagine, fear, guess what's going to happen, and spend time on it. Now, if you watch them all over in a binge watch, it's padding, isn't it?
Women overshut the fool out.
Yeah, I think that's the danger with things nowadays, isn't it? It's you can't just watch one part and then go, right, I'm off to bed, or I'll watch it tomorrow or something. I think so many people just binge watch stuff. I think, oh, Sunday afternoon I've got nothing to do, I'll just binge watch something. However, with the comments on that previous quote there, I can probably appreciate some of those comments, to be honest. I mean, if it wasn't done on location, let's just say if they decided to do it in a studio or a limited outdoor area, it probably would have felt a bit repetitive. I think the 6 episodes, it would have been hard to. I think it's questionable. Is this a story where you think is 6 episodes too long? Could it have been done in 4? Potentially.
Well, I'm sure Benjamin Cook is sharpening his
Oh, he'll
tools
find a
now.
way. Yeah, yeah, he'll find a way. I'm sure.
So, I mean, some great. I mean, this is all on tiny 60s TVs, so it must have all looked so kind of rich and that. David Howe and Stephen James Walker, you may notice some of them have given a positive and a negative, so they've been fair anyway. The control sphere gimmick for the Yeti is clever on paper, but in execution it's laughable. Robot fur balls controlled by ping pong balls. Peak 1960s cheese, and not in a good way.
He's looking at it. He's looking at it in a very modern way. I think there. I don't think he's sort of setting the scene of, yes, it was filmed in the 60s. Has it aged? I'd say, well, we can't really judge it until we see it in full, which we may never ever get to do. But I think this just goes back to what Doctor Who was about. It was inventive, and it wasn't, using those silver balls as like that was their remote, that was their receiver. Sorry, it was a clever way of doing it.
I think it works. It is a good idea, and therefore it's just in the execution, and it's up. That means it's a good idea, so just get on with it. And execution can improve with different directors and budgets. The idea of seeing that silver sphere and a Doctor Who fan going, "Oh, it's the great intelligence." It's like a clue. It's brilliant. Because once you recognise them, you start to go, "Oh."
It's another way that means that you don't have to bring in the monster every time. It's like this is going to lead to them appearing. They're not. I'd say their screen time in this serial, I wouldn't say it's overused. It's not as if there's loads of scenes, and because obviously they're not vocal, you're obviously limited to what they can do.
Yeah.
So it's more about action, and I think they're probably taking a bit of pity on the actors themselves that were in those costumes as well. Because I mean, I know when you look at him with the head on, this one on the left where he's got the head off, you don't realise how puffed out they are. He looks massive.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? He's obviously at home because he's got the silver sphere in. But the batteries are working. So this is what I mean. I mean, those who collect character options, they've had problems with, where is the Yeti? You think there obviously is some issue with Yetis on the big screen and even doing the models of them. But one reason why it's a classic is, we've mentioned the atmosphere, the location, the Yeti themselves. The other thing is, well, obviously people did sit down and watch the blooming thing. Look at those figures. Pretty consistent, and actually 6-part story. Stefan, it built an audience.
It did, yeah. I mean, I suppose, back then, what was considered a hit was more your sort of your 8, 9, 10 millions. In terms of Doctor Who, this is probably one of the more, when you look at episode 1 and unfortunately the one we do have left, the episode 2, it's probably more in the mid-range scale. I even look at the broadcast dates and think, well, did it fall over a Christmas or an Easter period? No, it didn't. It fell between September and November. So you only really had a Halloween in between there. You didn't even have a bonfire night quite yet. So there was, I'd say it's probably consistent. It's steady for the time. Whether it was something that people were talking about in terms of were the kids playing it in the playground or not, I don't know.
The thing is, that if everybody can see that, I mean, episode 2, the only one that does exist now, is the lowest figure. Funnily enough, there may be a reason for that, but and then it jumps by 1 million for the next week, and then it sustains. So basically, I do my ratings analysis over the month and a half. It's built an audience of 1.1 million. Now, part of that might be, obviously, we all understand this in Britain. As it gets more wintry, the chances of you going playing footy with the lads and all the rest of it, sometimes you just stay in, and it gets a bit darker or grim, and the telly's on. I know that for myself. So there's that. Because in a month and a half, you really are getting into the depth of a British winter, and TV ratings do tend to build. There's that element, but they didn't lose an audience. They built an audience, and if this does have padding or anything else, if any other critique out there, well, people kept with it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the end of episode 2, you see the sphere kind of rolling off and whatever else. But the start of the episode, you sort of get your first proper glimpses of the Yeti, in action. Increased with word of mouth. I don't know if there was much television advertisement for it.
I haven't found many listings or anything.
No, I haven't. And I suppose it's not like nowadays where, it'll be like, coming up on Saturday night, and they'll have clips of it. There wasn't many trailers for it. It might have had a trailer on the day, but like you said, it built an audience, and there must be a reason, because it's quite a consistent jump from episode 2 to episode 3.
Yeah. Well, I would have advertised it like that. Well, me and Garbage would have advertised it in a teaser trailer like this.
Get back, Victoria! I can't stop it! As long as that, you're right.
What is this place? And what are those?
Some sort of metal. They're all gluing.
Let's get away from here, Jamie.
Oh, if we can. What is it?
Horrible thing. What was it?
Who knows? No humans as strong as that.
Behind you! That thing! Like that? True! Look! Warn the doctor!
We don't know where he is! Run!
There you go.
Very
So,
good.
I think we'd have got the ratings up, you see. I think that was it's all possible. I mean, talk about regeneration. Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling keep changing what they look like.
Yeah, I know. I saw Fraser Hines turned into the boy who played the Omen or something like that at one point.
Yeah,
didn't
Damien.
he? Yeah.
So you were talking about the information that good. I mean, I don't know if I've really been to Snowdonia, but yeah, the cave and model sequences filmed at BBC Ealing Studios. Majority of the story being shot on location. I get the vibe of what you were saying about, there were fun times for them to do. I love all these sets, I don't know what it is. I just give me I think it's a good studio set. And there you go. There's the amazing Teletubby Yetis. We're saying that because of the bulk. Obviously, they are wearing nappies because, as we showed you, they can't use the toilet. Those poor actors had to wait a long time. It must have been hell. But there you go. I mean, you can see. I remember when I showed you the footage for Fury from the Deep, and you were amazed at some of the crowd shots on the beach.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people behind the scenes there, and some of those are the numbers. But I mean, you're in Snowdonia, and people are finding you. But I still think they look so grounded. And I still think if this is 67, and then very quickly after we had Web of Fear, I don't count the 5 Doctors. It's too long without a Yeti in Doctor Who.
Yeah, I do. In one respect, I wish there was another classic series story. Maybe a Tom Baker, maybe not a Pertwee, but yeah, maybe a Tom Baker or a Davidson, maybe somewhere around that era. I just, I don't want one now because I just don't want them to be spoiled or ruined, by who. Yeah, or whoever comes in needs to really establish themselves that we can trust them to take them on.
Yeah. I mean, from behind there, they look like a little womble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to. We've mentioned, I suppose, a lot of the talking points. First time you see the Yeti, it's the great coat of Troughton, which they've revived for the Five Doctors. It's almost an iconic coat for the Second Doctor, actually. It seems to be another happily, vivid memories for the cast. This filming. It seems to be a happy time, and yeah, that's how it comes across to me. It's the fascination also with Doctor Who and religion. Doctor Who and religion, are very murky waters. You look at some of them, because the Doctor's a scientist. Obviously, religion is almost the opposite of science, so therefore the Doctor tends to be a little bit challenging on it.
Yes.
And Doctor Who tends to make religious people look a little bit silly or blinded by faith. This monastic one, though, they make them quite sinister. They make them quite menacing.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to Troughton's coat, it's almost like, because it's the first appearance of that coat, if I'm not too mistaken. But it's almost like he's killed one, skinned one, and then just thought, "I'll wear it."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sort of how it looks. It's almost like they tried to blend him in with them on this one. But yeah, there's just, like I said, just some of these images here, just shows how, I reckon, again, we were discussing previously about there's no more announced animations at the moment. Are they looking to maybe do something with AI, to get these episodes back, better than the job that probably Ian Levine's had done? But I'd say with the scenes and the shots that they have, especially from these filming locations and what have you, they probably could do a very good job with the AI to recreate these accurately.
Yeah.
Probably more so than some other stories, I'd say. And there's a full set of telesnaps as well.
Yeah.
So the gaps could be easily bridged.
I mean, this is, to me, the kid in me, that shot fires up my imagination. You
Yeah.
can see the Doctor and Fraser Hines, oh damn, he's guarding the TARDIS. This Yeti, the size of the TARDIS, and then that great sweep. Obviously, avid and keen Doctor Who fans will go, no, that's not Tibet. That's actually the Eye of Orion from the Five Doctors, which made Turlough want to paint a picture.
For some, the Eye of Orion is the most tranquil place in the universe. It'll do with the rest.
Yeah, who knew? But there you go. They're lumbering down there. I mean, and they keep to the paths. They were good. The Yeti.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, can't fault them. If there was a road, if there was a car coming, would they move to the side? It's like when you drive through those necks of the woods. I was down there probably about August time. And you see sheep wandering in the middle of the road. I'm surprised that there's no sheep wandering around in the background of this, to be honest, at any point. And that just shows how well they probably did the continuity on this one.
Yes. I mean, you wouldn't pick a Yeti up, no. No. And I wonder if the National Trust members. So yes, there you go, lumbering down the hill. How many falls? There must be bloopers somewhere where these actors playing the Yeti must have tripped over a rock. They were always saying to Susan, please trip over an imaginary rock. Well, or Adric. In this case, they must have been tripping all the time. Would they have seen where they were going?
Well, this is it. They're so bottom heavy, as we've pointed out. And I know there is eyewitness accounts from the time that said, yeah, they did, especially when the wind was blowing quite high and the weather was crap. They did find it hard to kind of keep the balance, and obviously visibility was not great out of those costumes, was it? Compared to probably the Mark II. That's probably the reason they changed them into the Mark II. They probably said, we can't see out of these, they probably made them with those lenses that they could view it a bit better.
Yeah. Well, we've come to that point. It's one of my favourites. I even do a show on it called the Cliffhanger Show. So, the Cliffhangers, we've got 6 to look at. I've collected them together, curated them. I was obviously on one only film one, but this is our time to sit back. You can enjoy the sounds of Doctor Who, and you can actually relate to yourself. And we'll ask you afterwards, everybody, which is your favourite cliffhanger from this epic series. So enjoy, everybody, and enjoy that lovely kind of going back into Abominable Snowman territory.
Jamie! Jamie, it's coming back! Jamie! Get back! Jamie, the root!
We've got to stop that thing somehow. Oh, don't worry about that. It's quite dead.
Any attempt to rescue will now be highly dangerous.
Nobody is going to rescue me. Whatever's been killing your monks might very well kill me.
If
I think we've shaken it off.
Have we?
Kidon! In the rocks, did you see something? Grison, the Yeti, the Yeti! Oh no! Jamie! Victoria! Keep back! Oh, there they are, lost. No, keep it back, I'm not ready for it yet. Now! The rope, quick! Quick with the net! It's not your abominable snowman either, Travers. Look. But they're not moving. They can't have seen us, Doctor. Let's get to the TARDIS while we can. Yes, perhaps you're right. Oh, no! Miss Victoria! She must still be in the monastery. Find her! Miss Victoria!
It were better that you were not found in here. Go quickly!
Miss Victoria, where are you? Miss Victoria!
advise me, Padma Sambhava.
This is what you must do.
I understand, Master. Help them search for the girl. Go quick.
Coming, Macabre, immortal.
I think things are coming to a head. What are they up to? One more bearing, and I shall know where the control center is. I see. You want me to? All right, I'm on. Oh, good. Got a feeling I've done this before. Those Yeti are not transmitting. I'm going over. Sand! It's here, in the monastery. What? Are we all here? I remember. Yes. Songs. It's all coming back to me. Well, tell us. Well, those things won't bother us anymore, Doctor. Almost a pity to have had them destroyed. Oh, no! It can't be.
Do you know, it's the same cliffhanger at the end of part 6 to the one in Power of the Daleks, isn't it?
Yes, it is when you think about it that way. Yeah, because even yeah, it's just that kind of that little twiggle to say that they're going to come back. You know, I suppose that Tomb of the Cybermen's the same as well. If you think about it,
Yeah, because he's playing his little instrument. It's got the same little melancholy vibe, and then suddenly, a bit like the Dalek eye stalk moves, and then this one, his little claws move. And hey, I'm not knocking it. I'm happy with that. That's great. As a kid, you go, whoa! The Doctor's innocently playing. Meanwhile, he's got it wrong. Brilliant.
Well, that was probably their way of going. There, these are coming back. You know, that's probably their way of doing it, because at the end of Web of Fear, they don't really, you know, have any inkling that they can come back at all, do they? So,
No.
Yeah, it was probably like a little nod to go, we'll film it as if to go, yeah, these can come back. You know, we won't kill them off completely.
So we always have a bit of fun with this one before we then move to the real core of this, which is, you know, the missing episodes, where were the last scene, etc. So for you personally, as a Doctor Who fan, which cliffhanger grabs you the most?
I would say, is it part 4 going into part 5? Which is the one where, let me just double check it.
Is it this one?
This one. Yeah, because obviously with, I'm not going to say his name, Mr. P. We'll refer to him as. Yeah, I think because you have him finally properly revealed. I know in the animation he's just not giving any justice. He looks like the inside of he just looks like a skeleton ghost. He doesn't look anything like this.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my previous rants where I've said, look, if they're doing the animations, please keep them as genuine as they can. And that was one where I felt like they could have done that so much better. But I think 4 into 5 is probably the one that I'd have probably liked the most.
It's intriguing, this. I mean, I will mention them all because everyone's got their own favourites, but this one intrigues me. The animation, when it has that kind of web growing, the great intelligence grows in strength. Professor Travers is remembering at last, and then they show you what he's remembering. I'm just intrigued by that one, that whether that would have grabbed my little imagination as a kid. Seeing this one's interesting, seeing the Yeti out of control and actually start to just absolutely go ballistic, and he's in the monastery. That would have been an interesting call, because, you know, you think you've caught a Yeti. It takes you back to the invasion of the dinosaurs, and you've got a T-Rex in the garage. And then suddenly, as you know, Sarah's taking photographs, and suddenly its eye opens. You know, there's that element.
It's that sort of moment, isn't it? It's I suppose it's even like Brain of Morbius, you know, that sort of thing where it's good. I suppose even at the end of the Ice Warriors Part 1, you know, you see the Ice Warrior sort of thaws out and then starts to come alive. You know, it's that sort of, oh, what's happening here? It was very well done in Doctor Who. You know, even I can name it probably a couple of times, like the invasion as well. Is it part 5? I can't remember which episode it is, but it's where the Doctor's in the crate and it starts to move around. You know, that sort of thing. It's a good way of doing it.
Of course, we mentioned earlier in our show about the Silver Sphere, and of course, it's kind of a calling card. We all know the Master. If you see some miniature Logopolitan, you know the Master's about. And I suppose if you see a Silver Sphere, you know, well, the Great Intelligence is about, and hopefully a Yeti. So, I suppose it's all you see is it rolling away. But I think we've got to keep thinking of the 1960s kid consciousness of. This is still fairly early TV, and to see this Silver Sphere, and you know what it represents by this stage, because you've seen them elsewhere in the episode 1. Oh, I don't know. I think it's.
I think, but in fairness, it might not be the most exciting cliffhanger, but it's very relevant to the story. You know, because we've seen the spheres at the start of the episode. We've not really seen what they do or what they're for. To sort of then see them start moving on their own, it gives those viewers a bit more, oh, what's going on with this? And I think if they hadn't have put that in somehow, especially as a cliffhanger, it probably wouldn't have made much sense afterwards, or it'd have just been sort of, I don't know, just brushed under the carpet, you know. But I suppose Doctor Who was sort of trying to do a lot of things like this at the time. You think about the Cybermats.
Yes.
You know, they were trying to do these little things where something was remote controlled or whatever, and it was just to give a bit more of another element to it. But I suppose if we were doing the sort of shows that we do now back then, or this was being done now, we may have probably accused it of being a bit like, oh, they've done that already. They've done this before, you know. But as far as the episode 2 cliffhanger goes, I don't see any problem with it. Likewise, the episode 1. Fortunately, we do have most of that sequence, you know, because it goes into episode 2. Yes, it's filmed at a different angle and whatever, it's a different take, but again, it's that classic thing of the monster is not necessarily in episode 1 very much, but it gets introduced at the end of the episode to make people go, oh, I'm going to watch next week.
Oh yeah, I mean, you get a full silhouette of a Yeti. I mean, whoa, yeah. You've already seen a dead one, so you've got the Silver Sphere Part 2, the Awakening Monster Part 3. You then come to Part 4, which we've mentioned. Part 5, I've kind of said I wonder, and then of course we had the Part 6 where basically Travers sees his Yeti, dashes off, and then the other Yeti awakes. So, why do we need this story back, Stefan? Why is this, you know, I mean, obviously we want them all back, but why is this one a key one really in our kind of collection?
Yeah, well, like I said, I've mentioned before, it's the first appearance of what became a fan favorite in the show. It's one of only 2 appearances, you know, and when I look at the, you know, yes, they had the cameo in the 5 Doctors and whatever else, but like I said, it's the start of what became a fan favorite. You know, there's no question of that. It was another attempt, as we know, to create another monster in the show that could be reused. You know, there was obviously, they were trying to develop the Sidemen with the absence of the Daleks and whatever else, but the way how they were used, I think, was a very important sort of, you know, development of the show. This series itself, Series 5, you know, introduces the Ice Warriors as well, and obviously then the Cybermen were obviously very, you know, very present in it. You know, being at Entomb the Cybermen and the Wheel in Space. I suppose the only different story in this serial is in this series, sorry, is probably Enemy of the World, sorry, because it's the only one that doesn't contain a monster as such. No matter how you look at it, but it's such a key sort of moment in the show's history. Like I said, it was forecasted before to have you know, before it even aired fully, to have a sequel. Make them more menacing. You know, they were too cuddly, as I've pointed out there.
Well, yeah, because in this monster season there were some real big hitters. I mean, we've all been lucky enough to see the Ice Warriors, even that opening sequence, because they were playing around with opening sequences during the 60s, weren't they? And of course, you had that kind of operatic, strange singing as you saw that big start of the Ice Warriors every week, and it made it very haunting. And it makes them therefore very sinister and intimidating, just as an idea. And I think in a very strong monster season, the Abominable Snowmen doesn't quite do that element. But the thing is, you know what we're like as collectors or as Doctor Who fans. The introduction, like you said, the Ice Warriors, to find the introduction episode, the introduction story. I mean, can you imagine living without the Daleks existing? I mean, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, that'd just be, yeah. I think, you know, thank God for Ian Levine when he intervened when he did. Thank God he intervened and bought, you know, the episode 2 that eventually returned, you know, because we wouldn't have had either of that.
Nah.
It still baffles me. Again, like I said, their selection process at the time, like I said, they were just very brutal on how they junked stuff. Yeah, it's to me, it's a key story in the show's history. It's not as if I'm sat here boasting it out like I have with, you know, like I said, Fury of the Deep's a good example where it's not a recurring monster. It's not something that could probably have been done again. It's a monster that is so renowned in the fan base. you think of your big monsters, and yeah, you'd probably say that poll of them being in the top 5 is probably quite fair.
Well, the shocker. Let's be honest. We had Web of Fear and we had Abominable Snowmen. These are the only real two key Yeti stories, and you have to argue that 50% are missing. 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, Web of Fear 3, we know, as Philip Morris said
Somewhere.
to us,
It's
somewhere. The trouble is, it's not where we want it. So basically, there's one missing there, and there's 5 missing here. So you've got a whole 6 episodes out of 12 missing of the Yeti, and that's too much to take. That we're not seeing enough of them, and I think that's the great loss when we come to missing episodes. So obviously, Stefan, his main game in town is where are the what's out there? When was the last scene? So of course, I've got his details on that. So here we go, Stefan.
Yeah, so like I said, it's as it points out there, 7 broadcasters had this story: Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Gibraltar, Zambia, and Nigeria. Now, what's probably interesting is that it was received quite well internationally. 4 prints were known to be made of it. From the original master recording. They were the ones that were sent to Australia, New Zealand, Zambia, and Nigeria. But we know, like we've put there, Australia returned theirs in 1975. That was likely to have been junked. New Zealand in 1974, likely to be junked. Zambia confirmed to have no BBC material. Nigeria's fate is unknown. But that gives us a little bit of hope because of what happened with Web of Fear and Enemy of the World, which was sold in the same block when it went to foreign broadcasters. We know that they turned up in that relay station in Jos in Nigeria. Logic would probably sense that it's either been junked in that system. Like Philip Morris has said, if we know that's definitely happened, then we can live with that. We can accept it. Fine, we move on. But when we know the fate is unknown, it makes you think, well, is it hidden in another relay station in Nigeria where it just didn't get sent on or something? Yeah. Is it ended up in Singapore where a lot of the other prints are believed to potentially be? So, like I said, it's that whole thing where do we look at this and go, there's hope, or do we think, does a collector have it? You got to think, how did that episode 2 end up with a collector that Ian Levine purchased it off? Why just episode 2? It was the lowest, as we saw, it was the lowest in the viewing figures as well.
Yeah.
So why just that episode 2? I'd be questioning it a lot, thinking, well, I don't think that was just that one that was taken out of a skip. I think someone would have took more than one. It's a bizarre one. It's a very bizarre one, that one.
It is. It's funny if everybody who watches our missing episodes shows and obviously listens to Stefan. I'm going to have to somehow get him to talk to Philip Morris, but we'll have to have a code because obviously Philip Morris can't say where he's been. But I find it funny because a few times Stefan texts me and says, "Do you think he's done Cinepod?" And I'm thinking, we'll never know. But I assume he has because it seems all roads lead to Singapore in some ways. But
yeah, I think the Nigeria piece, though, like I said, I mean, I know Philip Morris was dealing with a lot of stuff when he went to Nigeria. That on that particular occasion, no, that was more than 10 years ago. I don't know if he's ever thought, oh, I need to go back there. But obviously, he's doing what Film is Fabulous do, and it's important to reiterate that he's basically doing the international version of what they're doing. He's not just going looking for Doctor Who. He doesn't have a specific department dedicated to Doctor Who. It's something that he found by chance. Yeah. So look, if someone rang him up and went, yeah, we've seen it in this relay station in somewhere in Nigeria, then I'm sure he would probably send someone out there as soon as. But it's his time and his money as well that he's got to fund these as well. So
and he gets all the brickbats. You know how it is out there. I mean, we all get them, But on the other front, the Film is Fabulous. I'm still very hopeful because, as you said, they responded to somebody's questioning. I get on my channel where people are saying, where's this announcement? And I'm thinking, they never said it was going to be imminent. They just said
No.
expect it soon. I think I'm trying to remember the language. Now, soon, come on, in the great scheme of things, they're going through a whole back catalogue of different editors from the BBC and everything. They announced, I think, just a couple of days ago, 3 former editors of the BBC, and they've got, I
Yeah.
think they've now legally got. It's not control. I've got all the wrong language, but
No, so
they've
it's
got
you've
access.
basically got There's basically there's 3 people in question as such, where it believes that we believe that 2 are in poor health and 1 is the one that passed away that they mentioned on the other missing episodes podcast, which they confirmed, and they will update in due course. Now, they put a post out the other day which basically stated, they'd just started going through these first 2 collections. You secure some additional work for them to hire an extra person and what have you. They have been very good in terms of when they're saying we've acquired this, we know of this in there. And I don't think it'll be any different to when Doctor Who comes around. But what is sort of bugging me is as soon as they put anything out about anything else, is I read through those comments with great detail, and people just can't help themselves. People, oh well, I'm sure there'll be a missing Doctor Who in that film. Can I think, for crying out loud, they'll announce it when they announce it.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's something about if we all behave like that. There's something, I don't know. It pulls the rug from under them. So they're excited at finding anything
yeah,
television or cinema history. And of course, let's imagine recently they found episodes of Emergency Ward 10. Well, if
yes,
it's not your thing, you're going right next. But somebody out there is going, that's brilliant. And and it's good anyway for television history that they're found in any episode. So we found Emergency Ward 10. We've got the actress at the BFI, and we're going to have a nice discussion, big event. And meanwhile, you've got some kind of Doctor Who fan in the back row going, so when you're going to do the Doctor Who? And you're going,
well, I think this is the
you're
I think this
undercutting
is
the
the
whole thing.
problem. I think this is the problem is they're in a position now where people know what the situation is, and then they're imminently doing it. And I think this is what will be the sad thing as well is, I know, like yourself and me, we are actively donating once a month just to keep their funds going through. And I encourage everyone to do that. But my worry is that I think people will, as soon as they announce a missing Doctor Who, people will just stop donating, which I think is quite sad, if that's in their mentality to do so. And look, it's one of those things. If that's what you want to do, fine. And I'd just do the give what you can. I don't say to people, no, you need to give £10 a month or whatever. Look, even if you donate a couple of quid, it's better than nothing. So we're all going to reap the benefits of what Film is Fabulous are doing. And I think it's really important to really stress that to everyone. But also, like we've said many times, give them the space, give them the time. And I just feel like they made a comment the other day and they've said, someone mentioned about the Doctor Who again. They've said, well, we're expecting to make an announcement early in the new year. So, yes, that's really positive. It's really exciting. But then we're going to get the other fans. If they turn up and say it's the Invasion Part 1 or the Space Pirates Part 1, to me, that's a blessing. But we're going to get those people go, oh, blimey, we've waited all this time for that. And it's like, you've only known the past few months that there's been something.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they seem to be saying, I think it's safe to say, they seem to be saying, we will see some Doctor Who that we've not seen since almost all the way back. That seems to be what they're saying. Numbers and everything else, it's going to, time will tell. This is what's so good about it. Now, when it comes to Abominable Snowmen, you've got your details here about. I mean, you get your detail about the different prints and all the rest of it. So, Gerald Blake, he was the director, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah. So Gerald Blake is one of those people where, like I said, like we said before, they were on a school trip. They were on a school trip and they enjoyed themselves and whatever. And him and Fraser Hines had this 8mm. Off-air screen footage, which we've seen copies of that were released on the Lost in Time box set. and is available, if you just search it up. It gives you good insight to, like I said, what was going on, whatever else. It's one of those things where it's nice to have. Look, we'd love to have the actual episode, but look, we've got some behind the scenes footage, and I think that to me is a really good positive with this story as such. It shows what they went through when they were making it. We've got obviously the loose cannon reconstructions. We know it was reanimated. Yeah, like that's what we have. We've got to hand until anything else is potentially announced. And like Film is Fabulous did say as well the other day that they're not the only source of recoveries. There is other sources that could recover. There's your Philip Morris's. I'm sure there's other companies out there that are doing this kind of work. There might just be those people that don't want to engage with Film is Fabulous and hand it back to the rights holders if they unearth it, So, yeah, there's very much hope in different sources, and I think it's important to remember that.
So there you go, everybody. We will keep doing this. I think the next project we'll be doing is the Faceless Ones. So, we will keep talking about all those missing stories. Tell us which ones you want us to do. Whether you're just enjoying us talking about them and you're happy just to see what comes next, but you can tell us. Now, Stefan, it's always personal, this, isn't it? Magic moments you want to see back from Abominable. I can never say it. From the Yeti story. So here's what you've said, and then I'll add some of mine, and then everybody in the thread can add theirs later.
Yeah, well, like I said, you've got any scenes with the Yeti are attacking in those later episodes, because in the earlier episodes there's not a lot of action from them, as we know.
They're hanging around.
Yeah, there's a lot of hanging around, and there's also, there's a lot of speech as well that goes on.
Yeah.
There's obviously those opening episode 1. I'd like to see how they did, like you mentioned, the screams and whatever else as well. The man being killed on the mountainside. Probably to see how graphic they did it more than anything, because I know there was the limitations, your Mary Whitehouses and whatever else. So it'd be interesting to see how they did it. Intelligence being unveiled for the first time, which is obviously the episode 4 cliffhanger, like I spit it out. The showdown at the end. Now, this is an interesting one because I feel like the animation probably doesn't do it any justice to how it was actually done. It seems very static in the animation. It doesn't feel like it's rushed and there's a lot of a struggle going on. Or it's hard to make it feel like there's a struggle because animation can only do so much unless it starts becoming like your 3D and whatever else. So that becomes a different challenge. The final scene where they go and they see Travers and send him up, he goes on their way. You see the Yeti, obviously, in the distance. And just to be honest, any scenes with Patrick Troughton in that big furry coat would be quite more amusing to see, because we've got a bit of it in episode 2, but just to see him pondering around in this big fluffy coat is always a good one to watch for me.
I always liked when I related this to the story. I liked the scenes when he's outside and he's trapped.
Yes,
and that I like any kind of outside adventure in this one. Anything from the cave they go back to later. Obviously, Mr. P concerns me, as in I'd love to see a bit more of that. This story is a funny one because in some ways, Stefan, it's not the magic moments, and I know we have our structure.
Yeah,
it's not the magic moments in this one that grab me as much. They don't all shout out to me. I just like the story. It's a good solid. It's not as if there's lots of key standout moments in it. It's a good solid, 6-parter. Which, in fairness, you could probably say, it's a good story. I mean, the animation, for some reason, they wanted to revise the cultural element.
Yes,
and so they've distorted a few things, and our last thing before we finish.
Yes.
Right. obviously, Film is Fabulous don't operate like this. This is just me as like a parlor game, right? Saying, right, you can
Good if they did, though. You know,
you can only have one episode back. We've got episode 2 of Abominable Snowmen. Which one, for whatever reason, and the thread you can add yours. Which one would you prefer back first? And of course, Stefan's doing due diligence, and you can see on the screen now. We might want to explain why.
yeah. So, like I said, episode 1 is the one I'd want to see the most because of the significance of the unveiling of the Yeti, and the intelligence obviously working behind it. But it sets the scene for the story. I think if we had episodes 1 and 2 available, I'd be okay with that. Episode 6, again, that's the obvious. It's the showdown. It's the ending of the story to see how it all came together and whatever else.
Yeah.
But then I've gone with episode 3 because we already have that episode 2. It was to see how that continued, how that was done. Give a little bit of continuity to what we had left. I've gone for episode 5 there because you start to see how the action unfolds. But then I've put episode 4 at the least because, as I've stated there, if that's what Film is Fabulous announced at the early part of next year, look, I'll be happy with that. But it's just, apart from that cliffhanger, I don't think there's a lot goes on in episode 4 for me to go, oh, that's the one I want. There's no key moment. You know, like I said, this story probably struggles with key moments. As we said, it's a good, solid story, but there's no kind of. It's not like in Fury from the Deep where we've got that scene of Mr. Quill and Mr. Oak coming into the room. It's not as iconic. But episode 4, apart from the cliffhanger with the unveiling of the intelligence, is the only bit that I kind of go, yeah, it's just not the priority for me.
Everyone knows from watching my shows that episode 1's for me set. I mean, it's the world building. It's always the atmosphere. There's a vibe about episode 1's where sometimes in a 4-part story, I find episode 1's are sometimes the strongest. You might say there's more action later on, of course, but episode 1's of Doctor Who, I have a sense of magic. So I agree with Stefan that for this one, I would really love it if Film is Fabulous just happened to find episode 1. And it's the very first time we see the Yeti, the very first time Travers and all the rest. It's great. So we've done it. We've done that. Faceless One's next. Yep. I nearly joked about Homer Aqua when you mentioned Underwater Menace, but there you go. Yes, check out our mini series of reactions on that. And we will be back with another missing episodes with Stefan on Faceless Ones at some point, as well as other treats. But thank you very much, Stefan, for giving us your time.
No,
and for doing all the work as well. So have a good Christmas, and we will do this again, I'm sure. And please write to us, everybody, and tell us what you'd like us to focus on.
No worries. Thank you ever so much, guys.
RTD wants Sensphere shut down. Those Hoopettes have had the last hand up them. Time to die. This is giving me the creeps. This never happened on Finger Bombs. One by one, they're all mine. They don't like it up 'em. All this walking, I wish I had my Benidorm motor scooter. Cry havoc!